Welcome, everybody. It is my absolute joy and pleasure to introduce you to Petra Zinc today. Petra is a brand and business growth strategist, keynote speaker, and author who specializes in helping executives and founders turn their expertise into authority assets that scale. Petra is the founder of Impact and the 360 Talent Co., where she works with leaders and organizations preparing for succession, exit, or board opportunities. She's also the host of the Trusted Authority podcast and author of Trusted Authority from Unknown to Known. Her work is all about building authority capital, the systems, frameworks, and trust assets that move leaders beyond visibility into lasting influence. Welcome, Petra. Thank you so much for having this conversation. I'm pretty excited to have this chat with you today. I would like to firstly begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I am on, at least, and you're welcome to do so in the region that you're in as well. For me, it's the Yurraga and Turrbal people, and I acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging. So today, Petra and I are going to have a little bit of a co-podcast interview. So I'm going to chat with Petra first, and then she's going to chat with me, and hopefully we make it super efficient so you get two nuggets of gold that collide, right? That's what we're looking for. So Petra and I met quite a few years ago now, realizing our last conversation on LinkedIn was, what did you say, 15 years ago?
2010.
Oh my gosh, so long ago, so long ago. But we actually met when we were working for a government authority, kind of in the same team. We didn't really work together per se, did we? My memory is quite blurred from that time, but we were sort of in the same team, working on the same kinds of things, but we didn't really kind of spend a lot of time together. Is that right?
That's right. We worked on rolling out the different payment systems. So I was part of going out and promoting it and developing one of the go cards. And at the same time, there was the option to pay with cash and then get rid of that. And yeah, it was a big events focus in terms of educating the community, putting flyers together, but also developing the product and getting feedback. So yeah, big blur for sure.
Yes, was a big blur. Hey, for me, and I'll probably talk about it with the questions from you, but that was actually quite the catalyst in my career. That not only that job, but the project that we worked on as well. So it was quite a catalyst for me. So the question I have for you first up is, you've had quite the journey from when we first met all those years ago at that government authority, and I really admire the growth and learning that you've exhibited along the way. So when I dug into your LinkedIn, and I love doing this, I love stalking people on LinkedIn and just kind of exploring whether they've done the same thing over and over again, or what kind of, not necessarily certifications they've had, but what have they learned along the way. And I really love hanging out with people that are into growth, that are into sharing things that are moving us forward, they're moving us in a forward direction. And so you've clearly done that along the way to stay relevant and of value. What do you think is the most valuable action you have taken to date that has brought you to where you are now?
I thought about that question, and the only answer that I have is embracing those sliding door moments. Like when we met, I was in brand and product marketing. And at that stage, I was thinking, this is my one and only career. Little did I know that 2 jobs later, that was the end of that chapter and the start of a completely new chapter. So I shifted from brand and product marketing, which I did at that stage for 12 years, into tech recruitment. So it's not only a different industry, but also a different profession. So I did a 180 change with no experience and no education because I wasn't trained for that or anything like that. But that was the catalyst for everything that came after that. And even though I never planned it because you don't become a recruiter, it was the the change for the next part. With that said, when I look back, the very first change that actually got then the ripple effect result from there was when I became a group fitness instructor at the age of 16. And I changed the Austrian law that also 16-year-olds could actually teach, not only do the education. And because I was such a shy kid and I couldn't communicate, and I was literally, you didn't even notice me in a classroom, it completely changed the way how I motivate people, how I speak with them, how I learn that you need to create bigger movements. Because if you give 100%, people give maybe 50%. So you need to give 150% that they give 75%, and small things like that, that I learned then to translate into my facilitation and training and teaching career. So it was just those sliding door moments that when you look at it, nothing makes sense. They're all random pieces in history. But looking back, as Steve Jobs said, it all makes sense. And now it's our turn to make sense of that for our audience and turn it into a story that they can relate to.
Yeah. So do you think that's there's benefit there in how you can do that for others? So when people tell you their story, you're able to help them connect what that journey was for them and how to turn that into a story?
100%, because I truly believe we're in this pattern recognition era. So it's not just I've got 10 years experience here and I've got these degrees here. Nobody cares. It's already outdated. But what have you learned along the way? What are those soft skills and those experiences that you've picked up along the way that you can then translate into whatever is next? So I've worked with lawyers who've never practiced law in their lives. But what we've identified is they know how to turn something very complicated in something very simple. They know how to read between the lines to actually identify what it means and so forth. So we've just made sense of that skill that they've developed. Clearly, they've got the degree, but we're just applying it in a different context. And
Mhm.
often I say, you can't see the forest for trees because you say, oh, everyone can do it, or it's easy for everyone
Yeah.
because it's easy for you, or you've just done it forever in 2 days. But for others, it's like the best thing on this planet.
Here's the thing about that too, I think, and for those listening and watching, we're going to talk about AI today as one of the catalyst for our conversation was a post that you put up in relation to AI. And I think connecting it to what you're just saying there, if I was to put my resume or my LinkedIn link, for example, into Manus or into another AI tool, and I asked it to tell me what transitional skills I had and to frame a story of my life for me, it wouldn't be able to do it. It takes someone like you to like you don't know the right questions to ask it, right? Whereas you know the right questions to ask human to human because you need to draw the emotion. You need to be able to go, hey, wait, stop. Let's dig into that a bit. I saw your eyes glaze over. I saw your face go red, or I saw you got goosebumps or you teared up, that kind of thing. So I think it's really important that those conversations that you have to be with a human. They can't be with AI if you really want to make an impact. Would you agree with that?
100%, because you cannot fabricate the emotion and the story that's connected, but also often it's also an underlying lesson learned, that because ChatGPT doesn't necessarily think critically, or any kind of AI tool, it just gives you the answer straight away. It doesn't necessarily ask you clarifying questions, and
Yes.
or doesn't pick up on your body language as to, I simply can remember when blah blah, and all of a sudden you're lighting up. You want to go deeper there, and why did that even happen, and how did it come about, and what did you do next? So it's, what Michael Bunyan always says in the coaching habit: stay curious for a little longer. And this is exactly what brain strategy is all about. And I say brains are built on truth, not on trends. So just because a trending story is how to go from 6 to 7 figures in 24 hours doesn't mean it's your story. It doesn't mean that it resonates with people. So even if everyone else
No.
goes viral with it, your audience thinks you're just a douchebag. What are you doing here?
My favorite thought now when I see that whole 7 figure and 6 figure is that you can have 7 zeros and you can have 6 zeros.
Yes, spot on.
It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a lot of money in the bank. But yes, you're absolutely right there. You're absolutely right. I've lost my little bit of paper. Here it is on that conversation with Michael. I listened to that podcast episode that you did with Michael von Gastania, and gosh, he's so insightful, isn't he? He's really insightful. I've listened to his episodes with Leanne as well. Funnily enough, I've not actually gone and listened to his own podcast. I must do that. I must do that. But in that conversation with him, you had, in terms of keeping your brand promise, and I just put a caveat here and share with the audience that you and I both love AI, right? We are all for it. We are not here to tell you not to use it or any of those things. I don't know about you, but I've been using it since Leanne talked about it. Leanne Hughes talked about it maybe 2 years ago. maybe less. Whenever ChatGPT first launched, I started playing then, and I spend way too much money on AI subscriptions. What about you?
Oh, same here. I registered because I remember we went to Austria and it was December 2022. And I heard about this ChatGPT thing and I was like, this is weird, but I'll just put my fake email address in there because I don't want it to get all my data and information. Like,
Yeah.
was the level of trust that I had in it? None. And then I was addicted from maybe February onwards. I had the paid subscription or whenever it came out straight away. And I'm also invested in an AI business. Like, it's very much it is the future. And there's a saying, if you can't beat them, join them. And let's be honest, whether we like it or not, AI is here and it's going to be completely changing how we work, where we work, with whom we work. So instead of just saying, oh my God, this is, destroying the world,
Yeah,
when digital
exactly.
marketing came out, honestly, it completely made my skill set that was so much in demand. And when we met, this is why this was my very first job in Australia, because nobody had that experience. I could get into this market fairly easily compared to others. And marketing is
Mm,
obviously a very competitive space. And then, if not even 5 years later, I was completely irrelevant because digital marketing became a thing. And my background is trade marketing and brand and product marketing. So same with AI. Just saying, oh no, it's too complicated. I don't know what it actually is. It doesn't make you more relevant or more
yeah.
valuable. It's quite
No,
the
we have to walk
opposite.
beside it, don't we? We have to walk beside it. And the key thing that I took out of listening to that podcast episode was what your brand means. And I loved this so much because I really struggle with the word brand. And like I've been through a branding exercise. I worked with an amazing couple of people who helped me bring all of my company visuals together, I like to say. And it did actually create a brand because it does tie it all together. And what I call things do mean different things. So I did dig deep into when I named Red Lanyard as to why I named it Red Lanyard, that kind of thing. And so this organization was fabulous in bringing my brands together and creating a cohesive look and story. So the brand guidelines that they created for me, like I had no idea they were going to do all this amazing work, and they did do incredible work. But I still really didn't like the word brand didn't really mean anything to me. But listening to that podcast episode, and when I think it was Michael might have said it, and you obviously agreed and knew, but it was about keeping your promise. And even the simple act of a chocolate bar not keeping its promise. Like you assume that you're going to get this thing when you buy the chocolate bar. Every time you buy it, you get the same thing, and then all of a sudden it's different. I think for me, that was when Mars changed their packaging. And I know they've done it for a good reason because it's more sustainable packaging or environmentally friendly packaging. And the inside product is no different. But every time I look at it, I think, oh, and it's just completely changed my desire to want a Mars bar for some reason, which is weird. But I loved that you both said what brand means. Your brand is keeping your promise. And so, what I want to talk about really briefly, something I've noticed is the the marketing copy that is going out with events is very well done. I don't know, I can't tell if AI is writing it or not. But what I feel like is happening in some spaces, there's one conference being promoted at the moment, and it's a marketing company runs this conference, and they are very, very, very good marketers. Like they are exceptional marketers. The trouble is their product that they deliver is not. I went to it last year. It wasn't great. It was fairly substandard experience. Luckily, it wasn't a huge investment. I didn't spend it wasn't thousands of dollars. It was, $500, something like that, which is still a lot of money. But it was in my own hometown, so I didn't have accommodation and airfares and all that kind of thing. What I'm seeing though, and what kind of happened to me, because I use AI to help me write my copy better, because as you can probably tell, I talk a lot. I write the same way. When I write my copy, it's far too long, it's not succinct enough. And so I will use AI to help me craft better messaging that gets across more effectively. And I have to go back and check that message to make sure it didn't make promises I wasn't prepared to keep or had no idea of the promise that I'd made. So I feel like people are using AI to write their messages and then they're just popping it into their ticketing platform, their social media, etc. But then when it comes to delivery, their concept of delivering was nothing like what was written in their copy. Are you kind of finding that in terms of when people are writing their story, when they're applying for jobs, when they're, or not applying for jobs, but when you're in your recruitment side of your business, that kind of thing? How do we help people, I think, is my question, ensure that the message that is being crafted on their behalf is authentic?
Love this question. And you probably addressed one of the biggest misunderstandings, what it actually takes to build a brand that resonates, because you explained the visual and verbal identity, so your brand style guide and the logo and so forth. Now that's marketing already. So it's bringing your brand to life. The brand strategy, and this is what I always call the unsexy work, is intangible and you can't actually see it. But this is where your brand promise is actually clarified, meaning what is it that you stand for? Why do you exist? What's your purpose? Who do you want to serve? What problem do you can you solve? So these are the questions that you usually don't have an answer straight away. And this is why everyone hates doing that work. But they want to go straight into, but the green palette looks amazing. We should go with green. I was like, why? Just because it's a trendy color, it's your favorite color, doesn't make it a good palette for your brand. And this is where people often go straight to the marketing because it's this immediate result. It gets the endorphins going and haven't actually done the boring questioning, critical thinking, going deeper. Sometimes also opening wounds that you kind of shut off, but this is exactly the valuable story that you can then bring to life through marketing and your assets. So when I say my values are integrity, honesty, perfection. Really? Based on what? Based on every other company that has that on their wall and doesn't mean anything to them. So clearly you have not done your homework. So we can actually fairly easily test it. Whereas if I say speed is one of my core values, how do I show it? You get a response within 12 hours or less. You get your brain strategy within a week or less. Like all the deliverables, all the marketing assets, all the products and services are aligned with that. And this comes down to keeping your brand promise. But because I would say 99% of companies and people have not actually done that work, they've gone straight into bringing it to life because this is how we make money. It
Mm.
falls flat. And this is why, I always say just copying somebody else's tagline and see because it works for them doesn't mean it flies for you because you've got a different story, a different value proposition, a different differentiator, but you don't know yet. So you just copy
Yeah.
somebody else's version. And of course, you're doing them a service because you just make them bigger and better and you undermine your own authority with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. So we really need to check, don't we? We really need to check in that what is being created for us, or the words that are being written for us. Like what I do is I read things out aloud. So my latest, I've recently had two iterations. One, Seth Godin actually said, "Do work that matters for people who care." And when
Mhm.
I heard that, I was like, that that is the kind of events I do. So when people ask me, what type of events do you do? I say, I do events that matter for people who care. And that has now become my North Star. So if people come to me and ask me to do something that is not aligned with that, it's a no thank you. It doesn't really matter. I suppose it would matter how much money you had. There's always that conversation to be had. But my latest is great events happen here. And
Mm.
I drove past a TAFE sign and it was something like life happens here or something like that. And as soon as I read it, I went, oh my God, great events happen here. And it aligned with all three parts of my business. And the more I say it, the more comfortable it feels and exciting it feels to say it, more so than events that matter for people who care. Because when I said events that matter for people who care, people still kind of didn't get that. So
Mm.
we've got to really find the message, don't we, that people understand what we mean, but it also resonates with us.
And this is where feedback loop comes in. So we can't build a brand, a product, a service, an event in isolation. You constantly need to stress test. And also, just because you found something that resonates and flies and people love doesn't mean it will fly and be loved forever. Like I've seen it even with my messaging 2 years ago. It was just going gangbusters, kind of, hotcakes were selling there. And then a year later, it slowed down. 6 months now in, this message has well past now.
Yeah,
So
wow.
because the
Yeah.
market is changing, the audience is changing, the priorities are changing, the context that we're operating in is changing, and being tone deaf to what's going on in the world is again something that breaches trust quicker than we can say the word trust.
Yeah, and it's so much, so many options for people, right? There's so many
Yeah.
options for people. All right, let's get into question 2. In your post that encouraged this very conversation, you talked about how you built your own GPT and the value of taking that action. Were you ever scared of AI, which I think we've kind of briefly touched on there? And if so, how did you get over that? And if not, are there any things that concern you about AI now?
Yes to all of the above. As I said, when I registered first for ChatGPT, I gave it a fake email address because I was so scared of giving away my data and I get scammed and whatsoever because it was a new thing and people didn't speak about it too much. But at the same time, I had FOMO because there were like 100,000 users already by week 2 or something like that. And I didn't want to be left out. And I was like, no, I'll just embrace it. And then I just got to love it very quickly. And then maybe 5 months after ChatGPT launched, one of my ex-candidates who were placed in a couple of roles came to me with an AI idea. So this is how we started investing in it and building that business up. And this got me a lot more comfortable with it because I was kind of front row seat with what it actually takes to develop ethical AI, not just any AI, how it operates, how it learns, what are the safety mechanisms. So because I was so hands-on and so front row seat involved in that, I didn't have a fear anymore. With
Yeah.
that said, now, again, fast forwarding 18 months, I also see what's happening in the job market and it's hard. I don't believe the Australian employment/unemployment statistics, they are not true. I do not believe that because they're also fabricating the numbers with full-time students are not counting as unemployed. But if you look at how many applicants are coming in per job, it's like the 2008 numbers again all over from
Yeah.
financial crisis. And looking at the US, it's even worse. So clearly there is something going on. At the same time, I think it's the 11th quarter now in a row that the private industry has not raised new jobs, only public. And there's only so many jobs that public can provide without private
Mm.
paying for it. So that's a massive concern. So I've got more of a concern what it actually does to the labor market in the short term, because yes, in the long term there will be new jobs created, but we just haven't seen that yet, and that's the
No,
concern.
kind of, I guess we're in that dip, aren't we? Again, Seth Godin talks about the dip. We're up here for the technology, but we're down here for the people, and the people haven't quite figured out yet. Okay, if I'm not doing that, what am I doing?
Yes, and
Yeah.
at the same time, the companies also have no idea what they are actually doing. So AI is not necessarily embedded in workflows already. Everyone
Mm.
says they're using AI, but using ChatGPT for a quick prompt or using Canva to come up with something is not embedding it in workflows. So this is probably another 2 or 3 years or something away. And then we can create new roles around it. But currently, I always describe it with there's a lot of dust in the air and we can't just grab
Yeah.
it what it means. And even though I've prided myself to always being able to look around the corner and have developed products before they were, trendy, I started talking about personal branding 12 years ago. Nobody was interested. And now all of a sudden it's becoming a thing. 12 years ago, people, what's
Yeah.
happening here? But
Yeah.
I think it will come. It's just not there yet. And this is what makes education hard. It makes it hard what skills to actually learn and focus on. Because, everyone talked about you need to get into AI automation. This is a big boom. But now AI can automate itself already. So 2 months in, it's already old news. And that's a bit disheartening when you just master the skill and everyone else can do it already too, or automation can do it and you're irrelevant. So that's a
I
bit of a concern.
I agree to a point, and I want to talk about this because you work with a lot of executives, many of whom have executive assistants. Now, more than a year ago now, probably about 14 months ago, I ran a workshop at the Brisbane Business Hub on how to use AI to enhance your events, to sell out your events. So it was essentially a workshop demonstrating the AI tools I use when I'm coming up with copy, content, as in like structure. Here's, this is what the client is looking for in terms of the outcome they want. What might that program look like? I would use it for research to understand what's happening around the rest of the world because we're so isolated over here in Australia. We don't see a lot of what happens around the rest of the world, particularly Singapore and places like that. And I was a third of the way through my presentation when I went, actually, can I just get a sense check in the room? Do you all know what Canva is? Does everybody know what Canva is? Are you using it? Can I tell you 3/4 of the room shook their heads? Right? So I see a huge issue with a whole layer of workforce. And this is what I want your thoughts on this, because you're encouraging the executive to use AI to help shape what it is that they're going to become. But they work in workplaces, or they run workplaces where AI is not allowed. They're not allowed to use ChatGPT. They're only allowed to use Copilot. That's it. They're not allowed to use Canva. They're not allowed to use any of these tools you and I have the privilege of using because of the security risk. So I feel like there's this whole layer of workforce out there, EAs, PAs, admin officers, marketing coordinators. There's a whole bunch of people out there who are still being forced to use Adobe, Microsoft, like all of these legacy products that are just, they're not, they slow everything down. There's tools that move you so much quicker now.
Mm.
How can we help those people understand that they need to start playing with this stuff at home? They need to go and buy themselves a laptop or a desktop PC or a Mac or whatever and start using and pretending they are in a workplace where they're allowed to use these tools. How do you think that's something we should be doing? Because I don't know, do you agree with me? Do you think there's a whole layer of workforce that really are going to be in trouble soon?
Absolutely. And I see the gap widening further and further. Same with middle class. It's not going to be a thing for much longer. And yes, it was a created level, but at the same time, we can see it now. You've got rich and you've got very poor, more and more. Now, same with skills. The one word that comes to mind, or two words, is mindset and agency. It starts there. And I want to be more tactical and practical, but at the same time, if people are not taking some responsibility over their own career in 2025 and beyond, sorry, you've got no excuse. We've got access to that. And I had this big wake up call when I, in 2015, so 10 years ago, was looking for another marketing role, but I hadn't upskilled in digital marketing and social media, which became a bit of a thing. I thought it's not tangible. What can I can't even sell a product. Like, this is weird. It goes away. So this is literally what I thought. And all of a sudden, and this is why I got out of the marketing industry, because I was not relevant anymore. And this is why I got into recruitment. And I thought, in the next year, I just upskill very quickly and then go back into marketing. So that was plan A. Never eventuated. But at the same time, now 10 years later, when we've got more access to tools that are even free, like back then we even had to pay for everything, there's no excuse to not learn outside your work. And it's probably controversial because everyone is pushing the responsibility to the employer. But an employer is responsible for giving you work and paying you for that work. No, like, even I know well-being is a big topic, but at the same time, we used to work 8, 9 hours in the job, go home, and then have a life. And now the employer has to provide everything and a well-being package for the dog too. I don't agree with that, but it's probably a very controversial topic that we don't necessarily need to get into. But coming back to that, agency, look after your own career, make yourself indispensable by skill stacking. Like, your foundation skills, they're not going away, but you add how to use AI, you add how to edit podcasts, you edit, that you've got a proper skill stack, and that makes you relevant for wherever you want to go next.
Yeah, I must admit, when I've employed people in the past, I've often been surprised at their lack of ancillary skills, I guess. Like I say, have you ever used Canva before? No, what's that? Are you using ChatGPT? Oh, I might ask it a question here or there. But I think you're right, and it's easier than it's ever been. So you don't have to go to TAFE anymore to upskill. You don't, well, I mean, I do advocate for formal education, don't get me
Mm.
wrong. But if you just want to know what's happening and start to get across these things, all of these platforms have free versions. You don't even have to pay, do you? You can just use the free version to its limits and just watch the videos, watch the tutorials, spend more time on YouTube learning how to do things, right?
That was literally my next statement. I'm about to transition to another online platform, the third in like, I don't know how many years. Anyway, I do exactly that. I learn on YouTube and then implement it straight away because you can do it. There's no reason for me to A, pay or say, oh, it's all too hard. I can't figure it out. We can all
Yeah.
figure it out. There's literally 3 minute tutorials. If I don't have time to spend 3 minutes on education, my priorities are quite wrong because everyone's got time to binge watch Netflix for 3 hours at night. So we can make the time for it.
That's an interesting, there's a psychological argument to that, and I did read something about that recently. And it's about that we do have, the fish attention span right now, being the 3 second
Mhm.
attention span. But at the same time, at the end of the scale, we can actually sit down and watch 7 hours worth of a TV show. And they are looking at that psychologically and why, how come we
Mhm.
can do both ends. So yeah, that's really interesting. So you've talked about that, you own your own recruitment firm and so have market intelligence into the future of work. Are there any other next steps that you think the likes of EAs and people like that should be doing to build their own IP, their own frameworks and assets to build their own authority? So your speciality, of course, is helping executives do this. Is there some first steps that those that are perhaps not at that executive level yet, but do need to start building their own authority? Because I love this. I really want to see, and I've mentioned to you before, I'm all about the grassroots, and I'm in groups on social media, and the questions I see people ask horrify me. Like they really scare me. My boss does this, my boss does that, or people who feel trapped. They really feel trapped because they can't see a way forward. Taking ownership, agency, as you mentioned, how can someone who maybe doesn't have the length and breadth of experience of an executive start to document or start to build that authority for themselves?
Well, that's the beauty. It is a an ideology that everyone can implement. I just focused on executives because they have been my target audience for 10 years. So I've had access to them, but at the same time, they also have ripple effects to their teams. So then if they want to sell their business, for example, they can increase valuation. But if they want to start a business, they can get more investment. So it was a natural fit that I've always worked with executives. With that said, every single person who's done something more than 10 times has a bit of an idea how to actually do it. And there is prediction that the majority of the future of work is entrepreneurship, which means you can't rely on the one full-time job that pays all your bills. You may have three fractional roles or three contract gigs or whatever it might be. One might be 10 hours, the other
Of
one.
us. Those entrepreneurs of us have been doing that for years. Like I remember
Exactly.
working, like starting in a workplace at 6 a.m., doing a 4 hour shift, using my break to drive to the next place, using my break to drive, and then running party plan and selling Tupperware and jewelry and all kinds of things of a night time.
But the positive on that, and I've also always done it, and this is what we call portfolio career. I've never in history, since I'm 14, and this is where I started, um, working in my dad's business, and then anyway, I've never had one job in my life at the same time. I've got, 8 different income streams at the moment with 4 big engagements, and that's not
Yeah.
even much. And especially now with AI, we can do a lot more. But because the pendulum has swung the other way, and we outsourced the responsibility to the one employer to look after me forever, we've become a little bit lazy. And
Mm.
this is why building your own IP is probably the one thing that future proofs you because you can then monetize it in different ways. So when we are an EA, and my focus and my specialization is I can turn random people structures into org charts that turn or that increase retention by 50%, or anything. What's my brand promise, what I've done so many times, what people have recognized me for, what I enjoy doing. How can I systemize that? So if I go into another EA role, or if I'm a virtual assistant, because we can do that, it's the same thing. It's the same value proposition, but I don't have to research and figure out how am I doing that again. I've got my template. It's like, hang on, we do this. And with that, you are more predictable with your outcomes, and also repeatable. So you get more confidence in what you
Yes.
actually offer. Because if I say, I can promise you to develop a brand strategy, how to develop a brand strategy?
Yes.
Next minute I'm on ChatGPT. Of course, it doesn't get me anywhere. And running especially a service-based business, you can't always create bespoke offers for every single person, because you have to do research, you have to put something together, you then have to deliver, then you have to tweak and refine. So you lose so much time and money on that initial part that nobody values, because they come to you because you say you can do it. So when you then figured out how to do it, it loses credibility straight away. And
Yeah.
this is why I love frameworks, because it frames your work, but it also leaves enough flexibility to tailor it. So I always say it's a toolkit, and depending on the situation, you may start at step 3 in your framework because this client is already further ahead. But in other cases, you may need to go straight to the beginning and do the entire thing. But it just gives you a little bit of North Star. Where do we even start? What do we need to do? And when you try to sell yourself, which is always a bit hard, when we try to sell ourselves our own expertise, we can refer on the framework that delivers the result. I just happen to facilitate it. But Johnny and Susie over there, they could also facilitate it, because it's a repeatable and predictable process. And this, especially nowadays where trust is at an all-time low, I truly believe it's the differentiator between you getting the job or the engagement or the project compared to somebody else who's got the same experience and expertise, but they're not able to articulate that.
And it's consistency, right? If you can show a framework, psychologically, the person looks at it and goes, oh, you do it the same way every time. Great. So if I like it that way, I'll buy it and I'll get the same way every single time. As you say, particularly in service industries, because otherwise we're like, yeah, but if I buy it this time and you do it that way this time, and then next time I want to do something different, you might do it in a different way. So we all need those processes. I think the key message there, the closing message that I really want to share with people who are in the roles that are possibly not at that executive level, and maybe some executives are also feeling in the same place. I guess it's not really a level thing, but for those people who are listening who are feeling like there's nowhere to go, their job is over, get out and start playing with it, and don't be afraid to start a side hustle, right? Well, I'm not sure. I haven't been an employee for a long time, but back in my day, there was no way in the world I was allowed to have a second job. It was in your contract. You were not allowed to have a second job. Is that still the case? Like, what's the feeling in the corporate sector about people having a side hustle?
It very much depends on the organization, but in the second, it is using their IP, or
Oh,
it's
absolutely not. No, 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 no.
yeah. But if you are a digital marketer and you want to offer dog walking, go for your life. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
especially when you can prove that you're not using the hours that you
Oh,
work
no,
there for
absolutely
this.
not. No, no, no.
But
I mean a side hustle like nighttime, your own IP, your own resources,
yes,
no company computers or anything like that. You've got your own,
yes,
laptop and Wi-Fi, not doing anything in the workplace. No,
no.
I don't agree with that at all.
That's it. But when I was in marketing, I always was still a personal trainer at night on weekends, but it
Yeah.
was from like 7 o'clock onwards. So it didn't interfere with my actual work hours. So, yeah, and it's just about being transparent, saying this is what I'm doing rather than doing it secretly. And then the trust is broken too.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
go out and try it. That is my advice to anybody out there who is scared for their job and they're not sure what they're going to do. Dabble in something else at the same time.
Hmm.
I mean, I think it's fun. I know there's people out there that are horrified by it, but you've got the security of your job. So it's not like you're taking a giant leap and mortgaging the house and all the rest of it. Petra, this conversation has been a delight, absolute delight. Thank you so much. I really hope that what we've been able to do for the listener is encourage them to go and explore AI. What links do you have for us to share? What would you like people to go and check out? Where would you like them to go?
Given it's a podcast, the most natural progression would be to listen to another podcast, which is
Yes.
the Trusted Authority. And in the show notes, there are all the links. Impact with Triple C is my company page with free resources and authority assessment, free tools. Like there's a lot of resources on there. And this is probably the best way to get started.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm going to ask you finally, what is a key piece of advice that you wish everyone would take? So something that you find yourself banging on about all the time that is really simple and you're just like, if you just do this one thing, it will take you to the next level.
Well, my clients will assure you this is what I'm banging on every single session. It's the 80-20 rule. Like we all know that. But the 20% is the event. And this is where we talk about your area of expertise in a second. But use the 20% to create 80% of the result. So if you're speaking at an event, prepare for it, get people to be part of that by doing a behind the scenes, by doing a time lapse, by saying, should I wear this or that outfit? So telling your story whilst you're doing it, rather than thinking, oh, I completely messed up this speech,
Mm.
horrible. It's one blip in the moment. It's not really relevant, but the 80%, the follow-up, the preparation, the connection, the networking, this is what actually gets you ahead. And also when you attend an event, don't just go there and hope for the best. Prepare, see who is there, what's the outfit, what were topics from last year, who are the speakers, connect with them prior. So you've got a bit of an agenda and intention to do it, because that is where the magic happens.
I
It's the
love it.
80% around the official 20% why we're going there.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. That's been an absolute delight. And yes, you'll find all the links in the show notes below. And thank you so much, Petra.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was such a delight. And what a full circle moment. 15 years later.
No, it doesn't feel like it long.
No, there you go.
I think we have to add 5 years on for COVID though. Thank you. That was brilliant.